This video is going to be about the correlation coefficient, small r. Now let's do an example of correlation coefficient. An agricultural research organization tested a particular chemical fertilizer to try to find out whether an increase in the amount of fertilizer used would lead to a corresponding increase in the food supply. Let's look at the data. Fertilizer in pounds and bushels of beans. And that's the data. Now we need to think about who's going to be X and who's going to be Y. In this case, the fertilizer is going to be X because that's independent on how many beans will be produced. So this will be X and this will be Y. Y is called the dependent variable because it depends on the fertilizer. Okay, let's continue. And what we want to do is we want to write this, instead of horizontal, we want to write it vertically. And now that we know which one's X and which one's Y, we're going to write the data vertically. Now for the correlation coefficient, we're going to need more variables. We're going to need X times Y. We're going to need X squared and also Y squared. We're going to need those as well. So let's write down the data here. Put in the vertical setup here. All right, now let's multiply X times Y. So 2 times 4 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. 2 times 3 is 6. 4 times 6 is 24. And 5 times 5 is 25. And 3 times 5 is 15. So we filled that column up. Let's also now do X squared. Make sure you get the X variable. So 2 squared is 4, 1 squared is 1, 3 squared is 9, 2 squared is 4, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, and 3 squared is 9. Alright, now let's do the Y squared column. Don't forget we need to utilize the Y column. So let's do that. So 4 squared is 16, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 3 squared is 9, 6 squared is 36, 5 squared is 25, and 5 squared again is 25. Great. So let's complete the table by writing down some vertical lines here so I can see the columns better. And let's find the sums. We'll add column X, Y, XY, X squared, and Y squared, so we can find the sums. So the sum of X, if we add that column, gives you 20. The sum of Y, we do that, we add it all up, gives you 30. The sum of XY, and when we sum that, we get 93. The sum of X squared, we sum that, we get 68. And the sum of Y squared, we add that up, we get 136. Okay, now let's write down the formula for R, the correlation coefficient. R is n times the sum of X times Y. Take away the sum of X times the sum of Y. All that, we're going to divide that. And the denominator will be n times the sum of X squared. Take away the sum of X. And when you have the sum of X, then square it. Now all this is going to be in one operation. I'm going to put brackets on it. And then another bracket. N times the sum of Y squared. Y squared. And we're going to subtract that. We're going to take the sum of Y. And when we find the sum of Y, we're going to square it. And we're going to close the bracket. And we're going to take the square root of it. Now here's an important point to realize, is that a couple of things. First of all, best way to do this problem is to do the math. So best way to do, after you substitute, multiply these two out, and here's a subtraction, right? Write it out. Another thing you'll notice is that there's a bracket here and then there's a bracket there. So it's best after you place the numbers in here, when you substitute, multiply, square, and then subtract. Very important to do this stepwise. Also, don't forget to take the square root in the end. That sometimes we forget. Now let's substitute the values. N is 7. That's how many data points we have. The sum of xy, where's that at? It's right here. It's 93, right? And then we're going to have a subtraction. The sum of x times the sum of y. And those you can find right here's the sum of x, here's the sum of y. Making sure also that we don't forget the subtraction sign, right? And we keep the parentheses, right? Very important, so we can remember that we need to multiply. All right, we're going to divide that. We're going to keep substituting. And the denominator, we have n, right? We have the bracket. N, which is 7. The sum of x squared is 68. Take away the sum of x. We're looking in the column, which is 20. And then we square that. And then we close the bracket. Very important to keep everything intact. Then the new bracket, n is 7. The sum of y squared is 136. And subtract that. And we find the sum of y. And then we square it. And then close the bracket. Don't forget the square root. Now, the next step is going to be to start multiplying and simplifying this a little bit. So 7 times 93 is going to give you 651. Don't forget the subtraction. 20 times 30 is going to be 600 divided by 7 times 68 will give you 476. Subtract 20 squared is going to be 400. And then make sure you put the brackets. Then the next bracket, 7 times 136 will give you 952, and subtract that from 30 squared, which is 900. Close the bracket. Don't forget the square root. So the next step will be 651, take away 600. That's going to give you 51. Divided by 476, take away 400. That's going to give you 76. Don't forget the bracket. 952, take away 900. That's going to give you 52. Close the bracket. Don't forget the square root. All right, let's rewrite. 51 divided by 76 times 52 is going to give you 3,952. Don't forget the square root. Then, again, 51 divided by the square root of 3,952. That's going to be 62.8649. And then we do the division and give you 8.11, which is a very strong correlation, a strong relationship between x and y.